On today's episode of Andy and Ari on 3, presented by BetMGM, Notre Dame snubbed from the college football playoff, also skipping the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Did the Irish make the right call on that, and why did they make that call? Plus, Florida Athletic Director Scott Stricklin breaks down the coaching search that started with everybody saying, go get Lane Kiffin. They didn't get Lane Kiffin. They ended up IDing John Sumrall, hiring him. Stricklin breaks down that entire process and explains how it all went down. Today on Andy and Ari on 3, presented by BetMGM. We are presented by BetMGM. We use BetMGM lines and totals. And you can join us by joining BetMGM. If you have not signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code CFB as in college football, CFB, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how that works. Download the BetMGM app and sign on using the bonus code CFB. Deposit at least $10 to place your first wager on any game. You'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code CFB when you're signing up. So download the app, deposit at least $10, place your first wager, up to $1,500 if your first bet loses. Use the bonus code CFB when you sign up. Make this college football season one for the history books. Make it legendary with BetMGM. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers are not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona. Call 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. Call 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa or 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code CFB and get your $1,500 first bet offer today. Welcome to Andy and Ari on 3, presented by BetMGM. And Ari, everybody has an opinion on Notre Dame, the ultimate lightning rod college football program, but the opinions now based on Notre Dame's sit out a bowl game after being snubbed from the college football playoff.
Yeah, Notre Dame fans asked Grok how many times I've tweeted about Notre Dame in the past month, and apparently it's 77 or something.
That's all?
Which I always thought was low, but apparently is like way more than anybody else.
This isn't your fault. You didn't
make them the most interesting thing in college football for a month and a half.
You didn't cause Notre Dame to be used as a plot twist in an ESPN TV show. ESPN set that system up 11 years ago when they started the college football playoff with the weekly weight rankings reveal. Look, I don't blame the Notre Dame players for being upset, and I don't blame the Notre Dame players for believing the committee when it said over and over that Notre Dame was ahead of Miami. I do blame everybody else and the adults at Notre Dame for not explaining to the players, hey, it's a little weird that we're ahead of them because we have the same record and the same resume, and they beat us on the field.
Yeah.
Like, somebody in charge should have said, hey, guys, this is a little off, and it may be the committee's just stupid. And I think that's what happened.
Yeah, because I feel like this idea that it's a plot twist is interesting, because it's like, if we acknowledge, which we have repeatedly, that the playoff reveal show every Tuesday is just a television show,
which we've said all along.
But I think that when you say it's a plot twist, that means it was deliberate.
Right. And I don't think it was deliberate. I think the committee was stupid. We've said it all along. If you go back to our first ranking reveal show, that first Tuesday night, first week in November,
check tape.
Ari and I, when they put Miami at 18 and Notre Dame at 10 or whatever it was, 8 spots apart.
Yeah.
Ari and I are like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And we went in on it immediately, and so did everybody else, with a shred of common sense. Like, it was idiotic. So you have the committee doing something incredibly stupid and continuing to do the stupid thing over and over again and being told over and over again it's stupid. Because remember, we said this the other day, it's not a jury that's sequestered for the entirety of the trial.
I mean, the committee chair is peppered with questions from media members every Tuesday night after they hear the idea.
They were told they were idiots for doing this. And eventually they got to the point where they put Notre Dame and Miami back to back, and they're like, oh my God, we
haven't seen this the whole time.
Yeah.
It's like, the thing that's interesting too is that like we have other responsibilities in life. Like we have to produce a show with River. We have to talk into a microphone. We have to write columns. We have to edit. There's things that we do. And I know they have other lives too, what they go back to. But like
Hunter Yurchek had to hire a coach.
I know, but like their whole thing is to do that. And like for me, I don't understand why they could not see what was right in front of their faces.
Well, but and so what this does for Notre Dame though, and I don't blame the players for feeling like the rug was taken out from under them, because they were told week after week after week, you're in.
And the funniest thing about this whole thing is that if the committee would have just done it right the first time, we wouldn't have been griping about anything.
And Notre Dame players would have been thinking we're in. They would have been like,
yeah,
we're out, and we hope something happens to get us in.
And that, to set this expectation that they were going to do it wrongly for 5 weeks has now painted me into a corner, makes me look like I'm a psychopath for tweeting about Notre Dame 77 times, where I am just confused for a month straight about the rankings not being correct, and then they get it correct at the end, and then the people who were flying high off of that error feel like something was taken from them. And I actually do believe, Andy, that if they would have done it the right way from the beginning, if Miami was ranked ahead of Notre Dame from the beginning,
like it should have been,
that they would be playing in the Pop-Tarts.
I think so too.
Yeah.
But here's my thing, because I'm Mr. Play the games, put the ball down, ball on the scoreboard's all that matters. I don't blame the Notre Dame players for not wanting to do this.
Yeah, but here's the question.
I don't blame the Notre Dame administration for saying, you know what, Disney company, you use this for your TV show. We're not going to help you with this other TV show you want to use.
Truth serum right in your neck right here.
Okay.
I need to clip my nails, so that might have hurt. I'm sorry. Do you think this is about television revenue at the core of your being?
I think this is about,
do you think
you
this
screwed us, so we're going to screw you.
You think that the players who voted not to play are like, let's show those guys at the television studios we're not going to be a problem?
I think it's, you screwed us, we're going to screw you.
I don't believe that.
I do.
I think that's what's being said. I don't think a 21-year-old or a 20-year-old.
So why would they not play? Because it's their decision to not play. You think it's a hissy fit?
Yeah.
That's all it is?
I do.
So do you think Marcus Freeman should have sat him down and said, guys?
I do.
Interesting. Okay.
Like, I think that I understand where they're coming from. Can I understand where they're, because like on one side of the coin, if they were a plot twist in a television show and they were mistreated with their emotions based on what their expectations were set to be and what actually happened, that's messed up.
I think they believe that. I think they really believe that, though. I don't think they would agree with what we just said, that the committee's just dumb. And I said this, I tweeted this on Sunday, like, don't assume a conspiracy when garden variety stupidity is probably the answer. But if you're the person aggrieved by it, you're going to assume a conspiracy.
But I also don't know if people are players or even coaches are seasoned enough to be like, well, how can we stick it back to the man? Let's hit him right where it hurts.
So
we're
you
a good
think
property.
Just I'm taking my ball and go home.
I do.
Okay.
I do. Well, here's the other thing too. Like, I don't know how much of a windfall there's going to be because all the sports writers love to praise the life-size Pop-Tart thing, and so they get their free swag bag in the mail. And like it turns into
I got the Pop-Tarts costume.
Yeah, I know.
I can actually dress as a Pop-Tart.
The Pop-Tarts have actually done the best job of marketing their bowl and giving people a reason outside of football. So they've done a great job with it. Yeah. I don't know what the actual bottom line hit is going to be if Notre Dame is not playing in that game.
Look,
so like
it's going to get a bunch of viewers because it's on December 27th and it's on.
And it's the only football game on usually in its window. Last year, Miami and Iowa State played.
But
right? I watched it.
I bet the game will get
fewer.
It's Georgia Tech BYU. I bet Notre Dame BYU would do a better number than Georgia Tech BYU will do.
But let me ask you this. Is the shortfall of income that the television networks are going to get based on the difference between the viewers
it's negligible
big enough to then cut off your nose to spite your face? Because bowl practices are important. I don't care what anybody says. I know it's a new transfer portal transient world where but Notre Dame, by the way, and I'm going to write this column this week and people are going to be like, oh, don't suck up to us. Like, Marcus Freeman was on USA Today on National Signing Day because he didn't have to worry about people flipping out. He signed 4 5-star prospects and maybe the best high school recruiting class in like Notre Dame history, at least in the recorded internet era. Like, they are a healthy program.
But the thing is, they are such a healthy program that they actually don't need the bowl practice.
But I actually think that there's no such thing as not needing to practice football for 3 weeks organized with your team. I don't think that like 4 quarters of
I
live
just think
action
if nobody's into it, it's not going to help you.
I think that it's Marcus Freeman's job.
It's
to
not
make
like they're
people
not
into
going to
it.
lift weights, Ari. Like they're gonna be doing stuff.
Yeah, I think it's Marcus Freeman's job to make his team into it. They're playing a game. You're representing Notre Dame. This is more tape for you. And if there's a freshman on the team that hasn't played yet,
right, this
and
would be
can
a
play
chance
3
to,
quarters of live action football against a very good BYU team that probably cares.
Right.
That's an important develop. Like,
Well,
I'm not
and
saying it's the difference
yeah.
between winning or losing the national championship, but I've never seen a place willingly opt out of the ability to practice organized football. It's like you could turn this 3 weeks into spring football if you wanted to.
The Georgia fans have chimed in, understandably.
Their guys always play.
You go back to 2023, they lost the SEC championship game to Alabama.
Yeah.
They dropped from number 1 to number 6.
Yeah.
What did they do?
I mean, they
played. Beat the crap out of Florida State. In the
Notre
Orange Bowl.
Dame played Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl in 2015 when Ohio State's entire season was win or go home. They lost to Michigan State. They played Ohio State, locked back in, beat the crap out of Michigan the following week, knowing that they were out, and then beat the crap out of Notre Dame in the bowl. And that set them up for a playoff run the following year. So, like, I don't know. I don't think that Notre Dame is not going to be able to make the playoff next year because they don't do these bowl preps. But I don't know if the spite that you think they're doing outweighs
it's the flex
cost of what.
I don't think it's the flex they think it is. I'm just explaining why I think they're doing it.
And also, I just think Marcus Freeman needs to sit people down in the room and say, "Hey, you play college football to play college football." Like, and I understand. Again, I see both sides of the coin. I don't feel very passionately about it, but I think that there are other ways.
Yeah, I'm not going to get up here and talk about the sanctity of the bowl system. Yeah, there's no such thing.
And I don't care about the bowls either. Like that, and we're going to.
If you really want them to play, do what the Players Era tournament did in basketball, and just pay them to play.
I don't care about the bowl season.
They'll play.
I don't care about executives and getting branding deals and
but
I do like college football and I enjoy watching it. I enjoy watching Notre Dame play, and I think that part of being a successful coach, which Marcus Freeman has been ultimately in the top 1% of in college football, is about creating a culture and an environment where people only care about playing.
So do you think this is a mistake?
I do.
By Marcus Freeman?
Yes.
Not sitting those players down. And
I wasn't in the room
sure about this.
I wasn't in the room.
Right.
I don't know who made the decision.
I feel like we're going to get some more information as we go forward. Like this, when we go to the Senior Bowl, this might be a good question to ask some Notre Dame players.
Yeah.
Like, what was that meeting like? Because there will be some time in between. And they may be more comfortable talking about.
And like, I don't want to lay responsibility solely on Marcus Freeman because I don't know if the administrative.
I think we need to know because Pete Bavacqua, their athletic director, was fired up.
But I think that Pete Bavacqua's comments on TV and on radio in the last few days or in the last 24 hours since this happened were far more impactful than any statement of not playing in a bowl game. Like what he said, I thought was powerful. How he felt was powerful. He didn't mince words. I thought that was what you do in that situation. If you feel like you've been wronged, Notre Dame has a right to feel wronged. You, as an adult, sternly share those viewpoints because I don't think he's acted inappropriately. I think he's fully within his rights to say the things that he's been saying.
Absolutely.
And then go play a game and beat the shit out of somebody.
I do think it was the players that were the ones who decided not to play.
But I think that as the adults, you need to make perspective about the bigger picture. Because here's the other thing, too.
Well, give them all the information and let them make the decision.
They're playing BYU,
right?
Who is another team
that feels the same way that Notre Dame does. Yes.
So go play a game, beat the crap out of BYU, and say, "Hey, look at the mistake that you made." And I don't know, it doesn't matter. You're going to go into the next year, but like I feel like this. The other thing too, and I don't know if this matters to them, but the entire sports world right now is calling them crybabies.
Yes.
And like, I don't know if that's what happened or how you want to paint it. If you're a Notre Dame fan, you certainly don't view that way. But perception is reality. You have people from Barstool going on viral videos saying, "Hey, this is a joke."
Everybody's changed that sign, the "Play Like a Champion."
That's a viral
take
image.
my ball and go home today.
Like, is that good for your program? Like, I don't know. I don't think that the benefit of, sticking it to the man is really as impactful as they think it is. And
here's where I'll push back on that. I actually think there's enough people who believe everything is an ESPN conspiracy.
Well, yeah, it's
who will get behind Notre Dame on this one.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because that's it. I was enjoying that. Like, it's a conspiracy to protect the ACC. The ACC is going to be dead in 5 years. Nobody's protecting the ACC.
And the ACC, and I do believe that like a lot of the ACC graphics that were posted, propping up Miami, did as damage to their relationship with Notre Dame, which has propped up a lot of the ratings of their games
well,
to begin with.
That relationship, it's interesting because with the SEC going to 9 conference games, with everybody having massive conferences now, the only way Notre Dame is going to play power conference teams in November is that ACC scheduling deal. So they need each other.
Yeah. That's a good column. That's a good thing. It's right, I think. But I do think that like my thing is like I always have like a strong opinion about something, and that's kind of a lightning rod for people. I actually see both sides of the coin here. Yeah. I really do. I really truly do. And if I were Notre Dame, and people don't want to hear it from.
Do you think if Notre Dame players had 5 days instead of an hour to make the decision, do you think they'd be playing?
Maybe, yeah. I think that it was the knee-jerk reaction to we were screwed. Now let's screw somebody. But I think that in the long run, it would have been better for them to play. I truly do believe, and Notre Dame fans don't want to hear this from me, because there's a lot of them who, what happens when you're disappointed? You want to blame somebody, right?
Yeah,
you want to find a scapegoat. I'm the scapegoat for some people. They think that I'm the person that
I think poisoned. You think very highly of yourself.
Dude, you want to go look through my mentions, bro?
I know.
I mean, I'll go look through it. I got at least 50 people saying you're the reason this happened. And that's ridiculous. Flattering, but ridiculous.
It's funny that no Miami fans are like, you're our hero. It's never positive.
Yeah, no,
way.
I'm no one's hero. I'm the enemy.
Yeah.
And like, if you don't want to hear this from me, but I truly do understand your plight. I do. And part of the reason why you feel that plight is the same exact reason I was freaking out. Like, you were told and sold a bill of goods. I also bought that bill of goods and mistaked it for incompetence. And then we got to the right solution.
I don't think we mistaked it for incompetence.
Yeah.
I think it was pure incompetence.
I mistaked it for incompetence that was ultimately corrected. Like, at the end of the road, I don't think that Notre Dame fans are pissed off that the decision was unjust. I think they're upset at the way that it was packaged.
No, I think it's funny because Notre Dame fans actually, I find as a fan base, they're among the smartest and
it's a good school,
most rational. I think they understand where everybody was coming from arguing for Miami, and they would have if the roles had been reversed, they know everybody would have been arguing for Notre Dame. But I get it, because you feel like you've been used, and if you feel like you've been used, you don't want to help the person who you believe just used you, and that person was Mickey Mouse, and they don't want to help Mickey Mouse right now.
But also, players on the team that are never going to play another game for Notre Dame.
Yeah,
their seasons abruptly ended. They thought they were going to the playoff. Now their careers are over. That sucks. Fans like watching their team play football.
Of course,
they like. That's the whole reason why those television, like, the fans don't get to watch them play.
Could have gone to Orlando. Could have gone to Disney World.
And I actually think that BYU Notre Dame would have been one of the more compelling bowl matchups that we even got. So as a consumer, we don't get that game anymore. And of course, the development and practice time, which you can say is imperative or not.
I also think this is going to be a thing where the teams that just missed the cut, they are going to be really mad. And perhaps the conferences and the bowls may want to think about that and give them a little bit of time before they make a final decision. Because basically there was a conference call with the ACC, because Notre Dame is kind of tied in with the ACC bowls. And it was like, okay, we need a decision for you right now.
I mean, here's the thing too. If I just got told I'm dead or my goals are over, I don't want to see rationally. That freaking Pop-Tart mascot.
No.
That's the last thing I want to see. It's amusing on December 27th. It's not amusing when it's the first thing you see.
Yeah, you just crushed my dreams, and here's a giant anthropomorphic pastry.
Yeah, it's like, hey. And also, we have to be honest, Notre Dame fans online were sending that image to Miami fans for like the last month. Ooh. So like that is like, enjoy the Pop-Tarts Bowl, Miami. Like that was their number one antagonistic route. So it would have been a bad, unfortunate look to actually have to play in that game. And actually, I wonder too, if they were playing in a bowl that wasn't so flamboyant, if they would be playing in it. Like, what if they were just playing in like the Outback Bowl?
Doesn't exist. It's
I know. I'm just saying,
bowl now.
I'm just saying, like a bowl that had like a regular sponsor that didn't pop a human being out of a toaster that got eaten alive. Like, I feel like the game is more of a caricature of like the. Like, it's like it's like,
here's how ridiculous this is. Two teams that had a pretty good season, but not good enough.
Now go play in the Grab Ass Bowl and we'll pop a human out of a toaster at the end of it.
Ari.
What? Yeah.
Next year, next year. The 2026 On-3 Grab-Ass Bowl.
Love it. That is that not the
live from Myrtle Beach?
Yeah,
let's do it now.
The mascot is just a plastic ass. It'd be great. But yeah, like I understand. I'm critical and understand. I think it's however you want to feel about it is your prerogative, and I hope that Andy and I gave you both sides, and then your opinion you can derive on your own.
And next year, if something happens, it's not, Notre Dame, we assume will be in the playoff next year.
They might win the national title next year.
Another team in the same boat, we won't make you decide within an hour. If you want to play in the Grab-Ass Bowl, we'll give you a solid 48 hours to decide.
Notre Dame might be into the Grab-Ass Bowl now if we could get the infrastructure in place. They don't have a game to play.
I'm going to go make some phone calls.
All right.
The college football playoff bracket is set. Do you want to go to some of these amazing college football playoff first-round games? Gametime is the place to go to get your tickets. Do you want to go to Norman and see Alabama play Oklahoma? Well, you can get in for as little as $269. And that is not $269 plus some massive fees that they're going to tack on after you check out. No, $269 would be the price you pay because that's how Gametime rolls. Download the Gametime app. Use the code STAPLES for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And you can go to Norman and watch Alabama, Oklahoma in a college football playoff first-round game, or go to College Station. Watch Miami, Texas A&M. A little bit tougher ticket there. The get-in price there, $454. And it goes up from there. If you want to sit in the good seats, you're talking about $1,000 or more. That's a very hot ticket. They've been waiting a long, long time for a college football playoff game in College Station. It is happening. And if you want to be there, Gametime is the place to get your tickets. Download the Gametime app, use the code STAPLES, and get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Got a little news in the world of college football. And here's the thing. So this Monday, for the past 2 years, has been the day that the transfer portal opened. So this was a wild news day. Remember a couple years ago, Kyle McCord hopped in the portal, left Ohio State, wound up at Syracuse. That was a huge bomb of news where Kyle McCord's name ended up in the transfer portal. And it's like, holy crap. Well, as you can see, the calendar has changed. The transfer portal is not opening up until January 2nd, but we are starting to get news about players jumping into the transfer portal. The big name on Monday, CJ Baxter, Texas running back. And CJ had a great freshman year, got hurt going into his sophomore year, and kind of got lost in the shuffle at that point. I think CJ Baxter can still be a good back for somebody, and I'm interested to see what the transfer market is going to be for him, because I do think there's a lot of schools that need an effective running back. This is a guy who was a big-time recruit who was excellent right out of the gate at Texas, but then he's got an injury history that you got to deal with, and that's something that we're going to see in the transfer portal, especially at running back, where people can come out of the chute hot, but they can sustain an injury, and sometimes they come back from those, and sometimes they don't. And it's really going to be up to this is where this feels almost like the NFL, where how much is your medical going to affect your market? And that's what CJ Baxter has to show. Hey, I'm completely healthy. I can be the featured back on a really good team. So I'm going to be interested to see how his recruitment goes. Another name that we saw over the weekend hopping in the transfer portal, and this is not surprising at all, Jackson Arnold leaving Auburn. So Jackson Arnold was the star recruit at Oklahoma. For a 2-year period, it was, we'll just wait till the Jackson Arnold era begins. He redshirts his first season there behind Dylan Gabriel. He starts for Oklahoma last year. It's a disaster of a season. They had a terrible offensive line. All the receivers got hurt. And then he goes to Auburn this year, ends up getting benched in favor of Ashton Daniels. So this is a case of, you kind of know what Jackson Arnold is, but he's still got that 5-star past. He still have those some 5-star traits, but what level of school needs to take Jackson Arnold, and what level of school can Jackson Arnold succeed at? I think that's the interesting thing, because I'm sure if he wants, he can probably get a decent power conference program to bite, but is that where he needs to be? Does he need to be at a different spot? Does he need to be in a different conference to be more successful? Like Jackson Arnold was a great Texas high school quarterback. Does he need to be playing in the Big 12? We'll see. That's another thing to watch. But we're going to get this kind of news as we go forward. We're going to get these this person is going into the transfer portal, but they won't actually be going into the transfer portal until January 2nd. But by announcing it, I'm not saying there's tampering. I'm not saying schools flout the NCAA rules about recruiting people who aren't in the transfer portal yet. But yes, I am. That's exactly what everybody's going to do. People are going to make it known that they're in the portal and that they're available, or that they will be in the portal and they're going to be available. And so by the time they enter the portal, they're probably going to have a pretty good idea where they're going. So this is a little bit like if we're comparing this to NFL time periods, this is like the tampering period before free agency begins, which is really when all the free agency decisions actually get made. So be on the lookout. You know, it's not going to be like it has been in the past few years where on this Monday and then over the next couple of days, you just got a wave of everybody who's going into the portal. It's going to trickle out a little more than that. You're going to have people finish their bowl games. You're going to have people that are trying to figure out, you know, kind of behind the scenes what they're going to do before they even say anything about what they're going in the transfer portal or not. So I think that's going to happen. I think you have a lot of schools that are attempting to retain their best players. So there's negotiation with current school going on. And that's really why they moved the portal window to where they did, is this gives the schools a chance to have a negotiation period to retain their players. It's them getting most favored nation status, essentially, even though they really aren't. A lot of cases, they don't have that much protection. Some of them do. It depends. It goes from contract to contract. But we'll see what happens. We will get more names, though. CJ Baxter, Jackson Arnold, just the beginning. There will be more names that hit, even though they can't actually go into the portal until January 2nd. So that market's going to be big. Pete Nakos didn't get to breathe. Like, coaching carousel ended, this started. So Pete Nakos is going to be the octopus playing 8 different instruments with each arm. That's what he'll be over the next few weeks. We probably need to get Pete Nakos 7 more cell phones. I think that would be the fair thing to do as a company. But you'll probably see a little bit of Pete talking about these transfer portal guys, their decisions, what schools they're targeting. That's going to be a big, big storyline this month, along with the college football playoff and along with the bowl games. Let's not forget the bowl games, guys. But the coaching carousel also still spinning. Now, it's slowed down on the head coaching front. You had Tulane hiring Will Hall, former John Summerall assistant, former Southern Miss head coach. He's got the Tulane job. So that was the news on Monday. But other coaching news on Monday that I think probably a bigger fan base, and they're very keenly interested in where this goes, is Tennessee defensive coordinator Tim Banks has been fired. So Banks was part of Josh Heupel's original staff at Tennessee. I think Tim Banks' defense was probably the strength of the Tennessee team that made the college football playoff in 2024. But Josh Heupel felt like it wasn't going as well as it should, that the defense wasn't as good as it could be. And I'll be interested to see how this search goes and who Josh Heupel winds up with, because I think if this had been Josh Heupel coming out of UCF, people would be looking at the offense he runs, which is the old Art Briles Baylor offense, and they would have said, okay, this is a guy who runs an offense that is massively up-tempo. They want to run 110 plays a game. I'm not sure I want to coach defense opposite that, because it's very hard to practice the way you want. It's also hard to play the way you want because you're getting put back on the field a ton. I think Josh Heupel's proven over his time at Tennessee that he is willing to adjust the tempo of his offense to allow his team to play complementary football. I think that's something that he would have had to prove before. Now he has proof of concept of that. So I do think it opens up the pool of potential defensive coordinators for him. Stay tuned to On3 and to VolQuest to get more specific names over the next few days, because you'll see some names emerge over the next day or so. But I do think that pool is going to be a lot deeper, because Josh Heupel has shown that he is willing to play complementary football. That was the big fear with everybody who ran that offense. But I think you've seen it now with Lane Kiffin, with Josh Heupel, that they've evolved it to a point that you can play dominant defense opposite that offense. You saw it with Pete Golding's defense in 2024 at Ole Miss. It's possible. It's possible. It's not going to happen every single year, but it's certainly possible when you have the talent that you can play a very dominant brand of defense and they still get to run that offense the way they want to. And I think that's a big step forward for the people who run that offense. Hard to say words today. Specifically for Josh Heupel, who now has that proof of concept. He can show potential defensive coordinators. He can say, look, here's how we did it in 2024, where we were kind of a grinded out running team and we let our defense cook. Because I think the history of that offense, it's been, if the head coach likes that offense, they're not going to care about how you practice defense. They care. Josh Heupel definitely cares. So fascinated to see how that search goes. Before we talk about another search, I'm going to tell you about our friends at Academy Sports and Outdoors. The holiday season is here, and Academy Sports and Outdoors has the legendary gifts and undefeatable prices every day. Shop in-store or at academy.com to save on gifts on everybody's list, from football jerseys to basketball hoops to fire pits to deer stands. Ari knows what a deer stand is now, so that's good. The most wonderful time of the year happens here this Christmas. Give the gift of fun from Academy Sports and Outdoors. And you know I love Academy. I can just go in and walk around and get lost for a few hours. But the beauty of it is, if you want, like, if my son wants a new jersey, if my daughter wants new workout clothes, if I want a new cooler, hint, 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 family, if I want a new cooler, hint, hint, they can go to Academy, or they can go to academy.com. Fun does not lose at Academy. Speaking of coaching searches in the coaching carousel, now it's time to dig deep into the hires that have already been made. And we have a very special interview today. Scott Stricklin, the athletic director at Florida, is going to talk about the search that landed John Sumrall. This is an interesting interview. This is an unusual one for me. I got to say, I don't think I've ever done an in-depth post-search interview with an athletic director where that athletic director publicly named a coach that they pursued and didn't get. It's a pretty unusual one. Usually they say, we're only going to talk about the guy we hired. And then you might get a little off-the-record conversation with ADs about who they looked at and how that process went. Very rarely do you get an on-the-record discussion of a person that they pursued but didn't get. I think in this case, Scott Stricklin understood you don't do one of these unless you're going to talk about Lane Kiffin, because everybody knew that that's who you're going after at first. Everybody knew that that's who the Florida fan base initially wanted. So that part of it, I think, is pretty rare and pretty interesting. But also how they landed John Sumrall and how they decided John Sumrall was their guy, I think, is a really fascinating thing too. They kind of narrowed it down after the conversation with Lane Kiffin kind of petered out. They narrowed it down to a couple folks. You'll hear me say, I'm going to guess at who the other person was, because there was a sitting head coach that didn't take the job, and Scott Stricklin would not name him in the interview. From talking to people around the search, I am pretty sure that person is Clark Lee from Vanderbilt, who wound up signing an extension at Vanderbilt. And Clark Lee talked to quite a few schools that had openings during this cycle, but I believe it was either Black Friday or the day after that he said, hey, I'm sticking to Vanderbilt and I'm going to be here for a while. So this was a really interesting coaching search, because it was one of those where as soon as they fired Billy Napier, you knew who they were going after. But then a week after they fired Billy Napier, LSU opened. And oh, by the way, Lane Kiffin was coaching Ole Miss to the playoff, and Ole Miss certainly looked like an attractive place to stay. So the odds of Florida getting him didn't seem particularly high. And Scott Stricklin talks about how that all went down, the timeline of it all, and how they decided John Sumrall was their guy. And then also how they beat the clock to beat out some other schools for John Sumrall. Here's Scott Stricklin. Joined now by Florida Athletic Director Scott Stricklin, who is done flying around the country. He's got his coach, John Sumrall, is not in Gainesville yet. He's working his way there. As we record this, he's about to coach in the American Championship game, and maybe we'll see if he winds up earning a playoff berth with Tulane. But Scott, what have these last few days been like for you now that the work is done? Everybody knows who you hired. He's got his coordinators, and it seems like the news has been relatively good so far, first few days of John Sumrall's tenure.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Andy. Well, for one thing, I'm sleeping a little bit better now that John is signed up and ready to lead the Gators, pending his Tulane commitment. It's when we were on the other side of this, and all the noise was about, we won't talk around it. Was around Lane Kiffin, and we had known for probably a week that wasn't the direction the Florida search was going to head. That there had to be a time where Gator Nation understood that, but you didn't want to move too early with that because you didn't want people zeroing in on John and disrupting what he had going on, and you also you didn't want to wait too late so it broke right when the day you're announcing John. It got pretty close. I'm not sure we timed it just right, but that was a not surprising response from people a fan base who for months or weeks at least have been thinking one thing to have that change. One thing they were excited about, to have that change. Anyone you put up after that initially was going to be met with some resistance. It's a credit to John, his energy, his charisma, his passion that they the press conference he was able to kind of get people to turn the page and get excited about him. And then hiring the coordinators in such short notice in just a couple days. And everybody said from the very beginning, including me and the others who were part of the search process, that the OC position was going to be a really critical one. And obviously we haven't announced anything as of this taping, but where that is heading is got people really excited as well. So he's checked every box possible in a very short period of time. And it's one of the reasons we're really excited about having him here in Gainesville.
Well, and I'm sure you guys helped prep him for the press conference, but how much of that was John wanting to kind of straightforward tackle the questions that people had about him? Because obviously there were going to be a bunch, and he didn't seem to really shy away from that when he was talking.
There was very little that he actually discussed with me anyway about his press conference and the comments. He actually asked me during one of our visits about the step down and not just that second straight hire of a group of 5 coach from the state of Louisiana, which is just such a weird Venn diagram, right? Of all the candidates out there. He actually brought that up to me, and I just, I said, hey man, it's initially people are not going to like it. And if you win enough, if you're the right guy and you have the right energy and you win enough games, it'll be a footnote, and it should not drive the decision here. And I said, the question is, can you handle it? I mean, you're going to take some flack. I'm going to take a lot of flack, but some of that's going to hit you. And he like me was not worried about that, but he wanted to make sure I was aware of it, which obviously I was.
So you brought up Lane Kiffin, and obviously that was the name everybody had on their mind when you decided to part ways with Billy Napier. And I always thought that's a strange situation to be in, because I actually remember when Jeremy Foley hired Urban Meyer, and it was a thing where everybody in the country who had a job wanted Urban Meyer. It came down to Florida and Notre Dame, where I remember watching the Notre Dame plane fly into Salt Lake City to talk to him. And this one was even weirder because when LSU opened, it became pretty clear, they're going to try to go after him too. And he's leading Ole Miss to the playoff potentially. That seems like it would be an attractive place to stay. How did those first few weeks of the search go when it was obvious everybody's kind of pushing you toward this one guy?
Well, just candidly, we had a lot of interest in Lane, and how could you not, right? With the success that he had, when you talk to people, to candidates who have been doing this a while, they're going to have some scars. There's going to be some parts of their career where they were not successful, and to see, Lane obviously had those, and to see the success he had at Ole Miss, that's appealing, right? Because somebody who's learned and they've grown. So it wasn't just we were being pushed to him. We were interested in him as a possibility, and I'd say strongly interested. And but at the same time, we knew we couldn't just count on that. And so we were doing our due diligence on a number of candidates. Ended up talking to, nearly a dozen when it was all said and done. But, it was obvious where that was shaping up. And there was a flurry of initial engagement, I would say, really positive conversations. And then the communication became a little more erratic, and the timing of when that began to occur, just reading the tea leaves gave me the impression that, it's a good thing we talked to other people, and we're going to have to look at some other candidates.
Okay. So you said about a dozen, so we're talking about, 10, 11 different people,
right,
who aren't Lane Kiffin.
Right.
When you realize this is probably not happening with him, how soon do you feel like John Sumrall is your guy? What did you need to do to get to the point where you thought that's the guy I want to hire?
John was someone from the very beginning that I had an interest in, that we had an interest in. He may have been the first coach we spoke with directly, not in person, but just, virtually, early on in the process. And it was almost like I wanted him to know, I don't know where this thing's going to go, but we think highly of you. And so, but I would say we started going down this other path, and we started spending a lot of time on that other path, all the while making sure we were doing our due diligence on the other candidates. And then it was probably about 10 days before Thanksgiving. So the last couple of weeks of the regular season that, we just made the decision, hey, we've got to really, we don't want anybody to feel like they're second. We need to really go in hard on 2 or 3 people that we believe, based on what we've seen so far, can be the next head coach of the Florida Gators. And John was always at the top of that group. And the other thing is, no one's naive. Everyone knew the whole Lane situation, right? Every candidate we talked to understood that. And there were several candidates that wouldn't talk to us early on because of that dynamic, because they're like, they're just going to end up wanting to do this with Lane. And we were clear through our, we used Chad Chatlos with Turnkey as our search consultant. He was clear with the agents and others that, nothing was a foregone conclusion. Nothing. Yeah. We definitely had a true live search going on, and John was willing to talk to us, and I think we both his side and our side quickly developed a comfort level and a rapport. It just was near the end of the process before it really started to make sense for both of us to go that direction.
Well, and the other part of it with John, I think that I don't know that all the fans understand the dynamics, because in some cases you're maybe not working against peer schools or other schools, or maybe it's just they have a good job and they're trying to decide whether they want to keep their good job or go to your job. John had Auburn after him. If Lane left Ole Miss, they were going to call him. I'm sure Arkansas was interested in him. How much did that dynamic play into it, especially as you got toward the end of the process?
I would say I was very aware of what else was happening in the marketplace and how dominoes might start to fall, and wanted to make sure that the Gators were positioned to be at the front of that line if at all possible. And so I was, and you're right, there was a lot of traffic around John in a positive way, right? There were a lot of schools making it known to him that they would be really intrigued if he came and led their program. So we were trying to be really proactive there. And there was one other candidate that we kind of felt the same about, that, because again, you don't know where this thing's going to go. And
would that be
I had no idea
who stayed at their current job?
What's that?
Would that be a person who stayed at their current job?
I can neither confirm nor deny that.
Okay. Okay.
But
I'll guess at it after this airs.
You're good at that. That's why you're a good reporter. I had no idea Jenny Sumrall's connection to Auburn, her being an alum. I had no idea how strong that tie was. Obviously, they had worked at Ole Miss. I didn't, he went to Kentucky. I didn't know if they were going to have an opening at this point, but you just never know. But I did know we had a great job at the University of Florida. I sensed that he had a legit interest in it. And once we made it known to him that our interest in him was genuine, I think it kind of put us in a really good position.
So you mentioned Chad Chatlos at Turnkey, and that's one of the more interesting aspects of this is Florida had not been a school that used search firms an awful lot. Jeremy didn't really use them, and you hadn't used them. You did use Chad when you hired Todd Golden. Is that right?
I did not. No, I did not.
You did not.
We
Oh,
did
okay,
not use
okay.
a search firm in that hire.
Sorry about that. So you hired a national championship winning coach without one. But it was one of those things that I've known Chad for over 10 years. I ran into him right before the Georgia-Texas game. He and his daughter were going in, and he was all happy because he's a Navy grad. Navy just won a big game the night before. And people on the message boards, the amount of fiction that came out about the search firm, what they do, I believe they fired you at some point. I had never heard of a search firm firing the school, but I hear that's not true.
No, we hired them, so that relationship would have worked the other way. But we had a great working relationship throughout the process. We had used Chad for some other searches. We just recently hired a deputy AD as a chief commercial officer, a guy named Michael Seeley.
Okay, that's where it was.
We used Turnkey for that. Had a really good experience. So Chad was my conduit because I knew Chad, but we used some other people in their business that had more familiar with that space to land their chief commercial officer, Michael. So I guess recently we had used them, had a really good experience. I have years ago in my prior job, I used a search firm for a job, and I felt like everything that we were thinking about got out among agents, and I don't know if it was the search consultant's fault, but I kind of wondered, if that might be the case. And so I just decided a long time ago, make this circle really tight. And, the old, I think it's a Ben Franklin quote that, 3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. Just right. The fewer people you have engaged, the better chance you have of keeping information tight. And the reason it's really important is because you don't want your cards to be out there on the table for every other school to know what you're doing. And you don't want and the candidates don't want their names out there usually.
Well, and that's what I try to explain to people about the search firm thing, because everybody thinks that the search firm is picking the coach for you, or they hand you a list of these are the guys you should look at. I know they do compile lists and that sort of thing, but I find in these high profile searches, it's more to do exactly what you were saying, discretion, to use as a go-between where you can keep some information under control.
Correct. And there was certainly, Chad has a wealth of contacts. I picked his brain constantly, like, hey, Chad, who are we missing? Who's not on our list? A name would come up and he would have some, he might have already done due diligence on that candidate for a search a year ago that he could draw from and kind of shorten our homework assignment up a little bit, if you will. There's so much, and again, Chad's a pro, and I'm really comfortable using Chad. There's I'm sure other great search consultants up there, but I just have a lot of confidence in him. And I think one of the reasons you were talking about all the misinformation that was out there, I think the team we used, Duke Werner from my staff, one of my associate ADs, who was part of the Todd Golden hiring process as well, used Danny Werfel, Gator great, Heisman Trophy winner, national champion. Danny was a unique person to include, in his personal professional life. He had the time to give us to, and this was a pretty time intensive process. Obviously, our GatorMade program, which is like our life skills program under Coach Napier that we're going to continue, utilized Danny around the program quite a bit. We had a Danny Werfel GatorMade Player of the Month in our program the last few years. And so Danny understood the current roster. He understood kind of what the situation on the ground was. So I just thought he'd bring a great perspective, and I trusted him, and he was awesome. So the 3 of us were really the search committee. I had a group of trustees that I kind of used as a kitchen cabinet to bounce ideas, and also make sure when we got to the point where we had to get a contract approved, they weren't hearing this for the first time. They knew where we had been and why we were at the position we were. So that was really the only group that knew what was happening. And because that group kept the information so tight, it created a vacuum of news about our search, which is the way I've always felt like you should run a search. Is there should be no real information out there. But in a a situation where it's a really interesting topic and a lot of people are passionate about it, when there's that vacuum of information, it creates an opportunity for people to fill it with false narratives and just things that aren't true, like the turnkey news that you said. There was another one about a donor that, we gave Lane a deadline, and it happened to coincide with kickoff of his game, and we didn't need it because the donor forced us to do this. We walked away. This could not be further from the truth.
Well, and I've had some conversations with that donor, Gary Condren, who, I mean, I don't know if there's anybody who loves Florida more than Gary. And as people, so for people who don't follow Florida that closely, or maybe are fans of other schools, Gary is one of those people who is heavily involved and has been very gracious in what he's given to you guys over the last few years to try to help the program. But he's never struck me as you must do this, Scott, because I gave you all this money. He's never struck me as that kind of person.
You read that well, Gary. No one loves the Florida Gators or has been as generous to the Gators as Gary Condren has. And at no time was he have any inappropriate. I may have talked to him once a week during this process, and there were some things I told him, just Gary, I can't share with you, but there were some things I could. And so, and he understood it. But he was not in the middle of the process. He didn't know who we were talking to when, and he had kind of understood who we were looking at, and we had a couple other donors that boosters that were of that kind of same stature as far as how they have supported the program and deserve to kind of be in have a little bit of information. But none of our guys. That's one of the things that makes Florida really unique, is it's not a stereotypical boosters running the program kind of place that you might. The Chad Powers show might make you think
right. Exactly.
legit, is what happens. That's not what happens. And so to see Gary and others do things the way you would want from a governance standpoint, to be supportive, be interested, but not be trying to run things, and to see someone come out with a narrative that is totally the opposite of that and make them some kind of villain it's really unfortunate. And again, I think a lot of it is because we did such a good job of keeping the information tight.
Yeah.
People just were trying to connect dots that didn't exist and create narratives that were untrue.
Well, and your circle that you had was about as good as you could do, because like I met Duke when he was the trainer for the basketball team, and when he was working with Billy Donovan, and there's not a more dedicated, loyal employee that you're going to find, and he's worked his way up to that leadership position, and deservedly so. And then Danny Werfel, I was a walk-on when Danny was a senior. It was my freshman year, and you're not going to meet many better human beings. And the thing I thought was interesting about Danny, because a lot of people who would be invited into that sort of position would be trying to leverage it or use it for something. Danny doesn't want to be an AD. Danny doesn't want to do anything with this. He just wanted to help Florida. And so I've been listening to, he's done a few interviews since all this happened. It's been really interesting hearing his perspective on it, because this was all new to him.
Yeah, he I think he was a little taken aback by how involved the agents were in the process. And the agents are highly involved in this process, not just at Florida, throughout the whole search cycle. And I think he was, and this is not besmirching all agents, but I think he was surprised by some of the lack of candor or I'm trying to think.
Play some games sometimes.
Yeah, people play games with information, and I think Danny was a little surprised by that. I think he was a little surprised by the links we would go to travel under the radar, and in ways that people wouldn't necessarily notice that. And it became harder when you add someone like Danny Werfel, because he's the most recognizable of the three of us. Yeah. And so slipping him in and out of hotels or airports is not as easy.
You got caught at least once, and I can't sell you on air who caught you or where it was, but because I can't give away who it was who caught you.
Fair enough.
But you did get caught at least once that we know of. So
at some point that's going to happen, because we did get out and about and see people in the flesh. So at some point, we were going. If you think about it, if you go to a small college town, you're visible. If you go to a big city, there's a lot of people there that you could run into, even though it's a bigger city. You think
that's what I think about, how many people I randomly run into in airports or in, just in a hotel somewhere. And you guys know a lot of people. And so it's pretty tough. But one other thing I really wanted to make sure we talked about is the general manager process, where you hire Dave Caldwell, former Jacksonville Jaguars GM. And I want to talk about the timing of that process, because I went on Feinbaum a couple weeks ago in the middle of the process, and I was actually surprised I didn't get a phone call from you after this one, and I'm glad I didn't. But he asked me about Lane Kiffin and the general manager process, and I said this is when I knew you guys had interviewed some former NFL GMs as you were looking for a general manager. But I also understood, and I tried to relay this on the show, that you were still in dialogue with Lane Kiffin, I think, at this point, and Lane had preferred to maybe bring his own guy, and you said, "Oh, absolutely, we'll talk to him too." And I'm curious, was there ever any talk of, oh, we're going to do the organizational structure this way, or was that always something you talked about with the various candidates?
So I'm convinced that what we ask head football coaches in this day and age in the SEC to do today, where they have to be the CEO of the program, in effect the head of human resources, human resources. They have to be in charge of sales. They have to be in charge of the money. I mean, what we're asking them to do is no one person can do. And Nick Saban did it really well for so long, and so everybody thinks, well, that's how you have to do it. And he's a bit of a unicorn, as we all know. So we need our coaches to coach and to lead their team. And I think we need to put somebody else in a really high-level executive as a partner to that coach to worry about everything else, including the recruiting and the rev share dollars or the NIL or the contracts or team travel, all that other stuff. We need somebody else to be responsible for all that and be a partner to the coach. And so I was convinced that going forward at the University of Florida, for our coaches to be successful, whoever we bring in, we're not going to just throw them, in the football building and say good luck. We're going to put a structure around them that gives them a chance to be as successful as possible. So I think the GM model is what makes sense there. The GM and the head coach neither report to one another. They both report to the athletic director. But they've got to work together. So you think about, if you have a really heavy wagon to pull, instead of just telling one person to pull it, if you had two people pull it, you're going to have more success. So we did. We simultaneous to when we started the coaching search, we started a GM search. And the goal, at one point we thought, do we want to just hire a GM and let that GM help us hire the coach? Mm-hmm. And that's certainly a fine path to go down. But a lot of
NFL teams do.
Right. Somewhat early in the process, maybe by the end of October, I realized we've got to find a match. We've got to find two people that not only will feel good about this structure, but will really want to work together to make it, if we have any chance for it to be successful. And so different coaches felt differently about it, and I felt like some of the GM candidates we interviewed might work differently with different coaches. And once we got down to the last couple names, not named Lane Kiffin, I thought Dave Caldwell was the guy that we had talked to on the GM side that, number one, would match with either one of those two, and number two, brought the level of executive skill and football acumen that could be really successful in that position.
So
I'll add a little inside baseball. So we actually we had a couple face-to-face visits with John Summerall, and the last one we had with him, we actually took Dave with us, and we told John ahead of time.
Okay, that answers my next question: is how involved was John and aware of who it was going to be?
So we told John from the very beginning, this is the model we're going to go down, and he didn't push back. In fact, he said, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'd like to hear more about it. And then the next time we talked more about it. And then the third time we actually brought Dave in to the conversation. They got to meet face to face and start, hey, it's kind of like you're doing a blind date, to be quite honest with you. Hey, this is a really important job. We want you two to work together. What do you think of each other? And they hit it off and got along. And it's interesting, even this week while John's been back in New Orleans coaching the Green Wave, and we've been having phone calls. On signing day, he actually went out of his way to say, hey, by the way, Dave Caldwell is doing an awesome job. I mean, I'm so glad that guy's there because he's really good at what he does.
And so Dave Caldwell is working on roster retention, working on prepping for the portal,
evaluations, that whole thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this is the sort of time when, in the old days, the coach you hired who is still working with his old team, and that happens more often than not when you have a good coordinator or a guy kind of jumping a level. It's interesting that now there's somebody who does that part for them, which I'm sure has made John Summerall's life as the Tulane coach this week a little bit easier.
Yeah, and hey, the coach is still going to have a say on what, who gets put on the roster. It's not like the coach. There's not like a wall there,
right?
There's collaboration. There's conversation. There's been guys this week. It's really been interesting to watch, even the short term. There's been guys this week that John has brought to Dave. Hey, look at this guy. Tell me what you think. And Dave has said, hey, I like this. I don't like that. We'd have, if we could get him for at this point on a contract, this salary, or so to speak. I'm not supposed to use that term, but this rev share number,
right?
Then yeah. If not, I think we can get somebody better in this position in the portal. And it's just, that's the way this is supposed to work. You have two professionals who know the sport really well, working together to get the best outcome, to make sure we're using our resources wisely and get the most talented people we can.
And that's something that Dave Caldwell has a lot of experience with. That the college GMs are learning that right now, but he's already done it, where he's got here's your amount of money, and
right.
whether you guys end up with a any sort of real cap or not, there's not a money tree where you just
right.
pluck it off. Like, there's an amount of money to spend. So yeah, I am curious how that process works. Does it make it more efficient? Because you guys are kind of on. I'm trying to think. Oklahoma has this with Jim Nagy, but you're only the second SEC school to have this arrangement.
Yeah, and I actually got on the phone with Randall Stevenson, who's the former AT&T CEO, who's helping Oklahoma through this, and I've talked to Joe Castiglione, my good friend there, because we tried to do some version of this last year, and it just
right.
didn't fit with our with where we were at the time, and so I think this is going to become more and more common, and there is a pool of talent. If you imagine it this way, if college football never existed and we just started up at one day, we decided we're going to have a bunch of football teams, a lot of the talent we would go get from a coaching standpoint would be NFL guys, right? We would go find coordinators, position coaches, former NFL head coaches who are no longer current head coaches, and we would be that would be our talent pool. Now, I'm not saying they have to come from the NFL, but there's a lot of really talented people in the NFL who are in a position to come and be effective in the college space. Now, they're going to have to learn. Dave's going to have to surround himself with people who understand the college space and recruiting, because he didn't have to do that when he was in the NFL.
Right, you just draft. They have to come.
Right. So it's not seamless. There is a learning curve that's going to happen, but it just so happens we've all invested in these personnel staffs that happen to know a lot about recruiting and college football. We're just putting an executive over that to make sure going forward that is a sustainable model that can take a load off the coach, so John Summerall can focus on leading his 105 guys to the best of his ability.
Well, you mentioned you've been sleeping better, so I want to ask you bring John Summerall back to Gainesville on Monday night. He gets introduced. When your head hit the pillow that night, what did it feel like?
It's we still have a lot of work to do, but it's hard to explain that what your body feels like and your emotions feel like when you have such an important position to fill and you haven't decided on who that is yet. And for us, it was about a 6 or 7 week period, and it's almost like you're going through an extended virus. You don't sleep well, you don't eat well, and it's not necessarily you're stressed. Actually, I think my stress level was better this time than when I've done it in the past. But it's just like you want to get it done. You have like a big homework assignment that's weighing on you.
All consuming. Yeah.
And that's all you're thinking about, and you want to turn it in and get the A. And so when John said he was coming and we got that signed, that was that was a happy day, and then we had to navigate all the PR piece and the storm that came from the Lane news and navigating that. But you knew that at some point all that was going to shift, because I knew Gator Nation was going to see in John Sumrall what me and Duke and Danny saw in him.
That is Scott Stricklin. Very interesting conversation about that coaching search. I said it before the interview. I said it during the interview that I'd guess again. It's Clark Lee, I believe, is the other candidate besides John Sumrall that Scott Stricklin had zeroed in on. And I know they talked to Clark Lee, and obviously Scott didn't tell me that, but we had enough eyes and ears throughout this search telling us stuff at On3 that pretty confident that that's who that is. Fascinating conversation. I think we're going to have to make this a tradition. I think we're going to have to, when they have the coaching searches each year, the AD comes here, sits down with us, and says, this is how it all went down. And I'm going to show them this video and be like, guys, Scott talked about Lane Kiffin. You have to talk about the guys you tried to get to. We'll see how many of them actually want to do that. But I do appreciate Scott Stricklin for talking about that, because I think it's one of those that's pretty tough for a sitting AD to do that. But I think in his position, and especially in the situation where the Florida fans were pretty up in arms when it was clear they were not going to get Lane Kiffin, I think Scott felt like he owed them an explanation. So now you've seen it, and future ADs that are hiring coaches next year, now you know. Come on here after you get that hire made. We want to hear the whole story. If you want to tell the planes, trains, and automobiles stuff that Scott wouldn't tell us, even better. Let's go.